reason I chose to speak about animal abuse is because so many animals are abused each year, even when owners don't realize that they are abusing their animals. The first topic of animal abuse that I'm going to speak about is verbal. This is when you yell at your pet. I understand that some owners do have to yell at their animal and say no because the animal gets into trash or is chewing up cords or getting into things that they really shouldn't be getting into because it can be harmful for them. And that's totally fine because people care about their animals. A lot of people do. And they don't want to see their animal get hurt or die because of a silly little mistake and because they couldn't control their dog or their cat or anything really. Verbal abuse can cause a lot of problems for you and your pet. Eventually, if your animal gets so used to the yelling, they might just think it's a game and act up even worse. This is bad on both parts because if your animal just thinks it's a game, they're going to think, oh, chewing this cord is totally fine, I can do whatever I want. And for you, you're not going to have anything to charge your phone, you might miss work, you might get fired, and then you're not going to be able to take care of your animal. So the best way to stop an animal from chewing on cords rather than yelling at them or beating them is maybe to get bitter cherry spray because that'll stop them. Like they'll taste something gross and they'll be over it completely within like 2 tries. A lot of people think that verbal abuse isn't all that bad because you're not actually physically hurting your animal, but it can cause a lot of problems like I stated before. There should be no reason that you have to verbally abuse your animal. If you're in a bad mood, then I believe that you should just isolate yourself in a room from people and animals if you're in a mood where you're just going to yell at them for doing anything wrong. And if you're buying your animal a squeaky toy, like your dog a squeaky toy, and your dog enjoys the toy, you can't yell at them because you were the one that went out there and bought the toy for your dog to play with. Your dog is just trying to have fun and have a good time, and there should be no reason for you to yell at it because of something you bought for it. The next type of abuse is when you're physically abusing your animal. This is when you're beating it or even just shoving its face in a mess that it made. I'm sure nobody would want to see their actual human baby's face shoved into their diaper because they made a mess in their diaper. Like it's just something that happens when your animal or kid has to go, and there should be no reason to lay your hands on an animal. Beating your animal isn't good and it's not fun, and a lot of people with actual problems will hurt their animal to have fun, or they think like it's funny to show their friends like, oh, I'm a bigger person, and it's not good at all, and there should be no reason for this to happen. A lot of people believe that bully breeds, Rottweilers, even Labradors and German Shepherds can be bad dogs because of how people treat them. They buy them off of Facebook or Craigslist, or they even can just find them from a friend, and they buy these animals just to hurt them or to make them aggressive. They want their dog to be attack dogs or guard dogs. There's commands that you can use. I've seen many people on YouTube that train dogs to be guard dogs, to say watch him or watch her, and the dog will, but it doesn't mean go after, bite them, like tear into their throat or something. And a lot of people think that any pit bull or Rottweiler that they see walking on the street, they'll cross the street because they think that that dog, because of its bad reputation, is going to attack them or bite them or hurt their kid or hurt their dog or anything really, and they cross the street to prevent it. And I can see if people are just scared of dogs because of something that happened in their life before, I can see why they would cross the street because they are scared. I would be scared too if something bad and horrific happened to me. But there are things you can do instead of making it seem like you are against the breed or against anything really. And this doesn't really go in with physical abuse, but it does in a way because some people do have to cross the street because people are abusing their dogs to make them mean and aggressive by beating them, not feeding them. And if their dog that they want to be their guard dog or attack dog is friendly with a stranger, then they beat their dog or they starve it for a few days, and that's just not right because the dogs don't deserve that. No animal deserves that. People don't deserve that, but people are the ones that are doing it. So I just don't think it's right. And I've personally had Nikita, and I had her whole life, you know. She's seen me as a baby. She was even a little bit older then, and she was the sweetest dog. And a lot of renting agencies, they just don't allow these specific breeds because they don't want somebody to bring the dog in and make it mean. But this can happen with any dog. It can happen with a little toy poodle or a chihuahua or a pug or anything like that. It can happen just to happen to that dog. So, and people are scared of them. But I don't think that people should be doing this to their animals because animals do have nerves in their bodies and they do feel when you hit them or something, you know? And it hurts. You wouldn't want to see somebody just out there abusing their kid. So why don't people try to stop them when they're abusing dogs or cats, you know? Type of abuse, the next type of abuse that I'm going to talk about is neglect. That's when somebody somebody leaves their dog or their cat outside in the freezing cold with no shelter, no food, no water, nothing like that. And that's not right in my opinion because animals, if you bring them in, they become your responsibility. They're not your neighbor's responsibility that feeds the local strays. Your cat isn't a stray. Your dog isn't a stray. So there should be no reason for you to leave it outside like that because it is your responsibility. And so when I see a cat outside or a dog outside, my first thought is maybe to turn the person in, but then it gets scary because you don't want somebody to, like, say that it is just like a lost cat but you can't catch it. You don't want to just call the cops on somebody because they might actually miss their cat and it might have gotten outside on accident. But these dogs that are chained up outside with no house and no food and no water, nothing like that, they're freezing. They might have, you know, a thick coat on or something with, not like an actual coat, but like their fur and their that kind of coat. And that doesn't always work because we have hair on our heads and we still wear hats to keep our heads warm, and we have hair that maybe can cover our ears. We still have like earmuffs that will keep our ears warm. So you might think that just because a German Shepherd has a really thick, like medium length coat that it's going to be warm outside, but it's not. And some double coat breeds can have the ability to cool themselves off and also warm themselves up because they have a double coat. But dogs with those thin coats like pit bulls, they can't warm themselves up like that. And if the wind and the snow is just hitting onto your dog's going to freeze to death just like any other person could freeze to death. A lot of people do find these animals in pet stores like a chinchilla or a ferret or a gerbil or hamster, and they get them little tiny cages with little bars, and they think because it is a small animal that that's just enough space for them to just run around in the corners. And that's not right because like chinchillas, they like to jump around and have different levels because they have so much energy. They are jumpy animals, and they just can't stay in a little box and look out the bars and be like, hey, when can I go and, you know, if you have it in your bedroom, when can I go hop on that bed and hop on the clothing racks? And it's sad because a lot of these animals, they get put in these cages and they get stuck there for their whole life, and it can stress them out to where they might die from the stress levels of not being able to run around and get all the jitters out of themselves. And it can be, you might not think that it's that bad, which is why I say that owners don't think they actually are abusing the animals. And a lot of people don't read up on these animals, and sometimes even the people that produce the cages for these kinds of animals, they will just put anything out there so they will get money. So a little chinchilla cage with plastic bars and stuff, the chinchilla is going to chew right through that, and then, you know, you got a sick animal, and that's going to cost money because you didn't really know or think about getting them a metal cage that they can, you know, climb all around, and they won't be able to chew through it and get sick, you know? About Next, I'm going to talk about the penalties and punishments for abusing an animal in the state of Pennsylvania. The fine for abusing an animal can range from no less than $500 all the way up to $15,000 because of hitting your animal or leaving it outside with no shelter or food or anything like that. And if it gets so bad that a fine isn't working, they can put you in jail if you kill an animal for no reason or it was against the law to kill that kind of animal. And they can put you in jail from 3 months to 36 months, which is 3 years. And that's a really long time. So, killing that cat that was in your garbage or something like that isn't really worth 3 years of your life or any time of your life, really. Just, get it out of there, maybe try to catch it, put it in a shelter or something where it can be adopted out or put in a barn to catch mice for people. If you are put into jail, if your judgment allows you to have bail, then somebody can bail you out for a specific amount of money or with the fine as well. And you can do community service for a couple of months or so many hours that they say that you have to do, and once you complete those hours, then you're done. And then you can go back to having a free life and you won't have to put your time into cleaning up garbage off the streets or feeding the homeless in one of those shelters like that. And also, if you aren't approved for community service, you will have to go to probation for a few months up to 2 years, which I don't think serves animals justice at all because the people are outside of jail and they deserve their punishment. The steps to prevent animal abuse is taking a class, even if that's just with your dog, so you don't have to put your time into training your dog not to get into trash, or even if it's just basic commands like sit, lay down, stuff like that. You can take classes on how to teach your dog things, and you can also buy a trainer for your dog or really any kind of animal nowadays. So that's cool. And so, the classes really can prevent animal abuse because if you have someone that helps you work with your dog not to get in the trash or anything, that's a lot less stress for you and your pet. And, there's no reason in general for you to hit your animal, but also there won't really actually be a reason to hit your animal if your animal isn't doing anything wrong. Like if you have the perfect pet, because of you, spending a couple dollars, well, it's more than a couple dollars, but it is worth it in the end because it prevents something bad from happening. Or if you have to crate train your animal, that's fine too, because if you're gone at work for a few hours but you aren't fully comfortable with your new puppy or kitten, then that's, fun and fresh. Some animal shelters do background checks, and they screen you for animal abuse cases. So if they do see that, then, you're not getting the animal because they know better than to give you that animal. And also they can do home checks to make sure that your house is up to par to own an animal, puppy proof it, cat proof it, there's no way for your animal to get outside, get lost, and end right back up in a shelter. And they do also make sure that your animal, or if you are renting, that you are allowed to have animals. They do check in with your landlord most of the time to make sure your animal isn't going to be homeless again.